You're at 109 right now.
All right, let's get into it, shall we? This book is by Jerry Stanley. Make sure you can see that. There's that glare. I hope that glare doesn't get it. This is the book. Chapter 1. We saw a black man straining. An informed person like Mifflin Gibbs knew that the West was extremely hostile toward African Americans. They were barred from entering Indiana, Illinois, Kansas, and Oregon. To enter Ohio, Michigan, or Iowa, they had to post a bond of up to $1,000. The western states and territories wanted an all-white population and granted few rights to African Americans. Even where there weren't laws against them, they wouldn't be welcome as competitors. To add to the uncertainty, California wasn't a state yet. What if it became a slave state? What if it became a free state but barred African Americans from entering? White people, this is my commentary. White people just up to their evil ways, period. On my drive home, I was thinking to myself, what would make someone do this? Well, the European was escaping Europe and all of the problems that existed in Europe. The European did not bathe. The European was backwards. The European, was uncivilized for that. No, because that is the best word. So the European was trying to escape Europe and was met with all of these civilized nations. We call them Native Americans or the Indians, civilized nations. In Africa, civilized empires, That's the thought I had. I was like, man, they were so backwards. They were trying to escape. But not only were they backwards, they also had this mentality of scarcity. They had the scarcity mindset, not the abundance. They weren't thinking abundantly. 500 plus years later, here we are today. But I digress. Frederick Douglass told Gibbs not to go to California, and Douglass's newspaper, the North Star, gave the same advice to all African Americans. Frederick Douglass told Gibbs not to go to California. Gibbs hesitated. Not only would he face prejudice, but he didn't have the money for the trip, didn't know the first thing about mining, and didn't know anyone else who was going to California. It certainly wasn't logic that compelled him to join the gold rush. It was more like hope born of desperation. Whew, I know this very well. Hope born of desperation. When I moved to South Korea, I didn't know anyone. All I did was, I did have some money. I took some credit cards with me. And I was like, I can't make it in America. I can't make it in Los Angeles, my home. There are no jobs. I've got bills piling up. I need time. I need time to think. I need time to organize. America, Los Angeles just wasn't doing it for me. So I went to South Korea. I took my credit cards, and all I had was my hope, born out of desperation, because I was desperate. So I understand. Gibbs was captivated by the stories of blacks striking it rich in California, which he read in the North Star and other abolitionist papers. All right, my commentary. So Frederick, old Freddie boy, to the ancestor. Let me not use informal language. All right. So Mr. Douglas, Frederick Douglass, at once advised Gibbs not to go to California, but at the same time, his newspaper, the North Star, was also promoting California as this place where opportunity existed, and that's what he was saying to all African Americans. But to Gibbs, he was saying, hold up, man, don't go. Maybe he knew Gibbs. Maybe he knew Gibbs, had a personal relationship, and was like, man, you're not ready to go to California. But yes, there is some abundance out there. Maybe that's what Frederick Douglass was saying. But I digress. Let me continue. After the first discovery in 1848, sailors in San Francisco jumped ship and headed for the gold fields. Gibbs read the amazing account of two black sailors who mined $30,000 in gold in just 4 weeks. Even better was the story about the black man who was walking on the docks of San Francisco in 1848. A white man called to him to carry his luggage. The black man, gave him a stare and drew a pouch of gold from his pocket. Holding it up, he said, "Do you think I'll lug your trunks when I can get this much in one day?" The stories made California powerfully tempting to an unemployed carpenter with attitude. That part, the attitude part. So what if he wouldn't be wanted in California? So what if he should be afraid? So what if other African Americans dared not go? Hope out of desperation, y'all. He said, man. So Gibbs had both sides. Gibbs heard the good stuff, heard the bad stuff. He waited. He said, well, what am I going to do? He said, man, damn all that bad stuff. That good stuff, that's what I'm about. But I digress. By 1840, Gibbs decided to follow his inner voice. See? Decided to follow his inner voice and take the gamble. His friends made a final plea for him to stay. Come on, Gibbs, baby, stay, man. You don't want that. Come on, baby, you don't want that. But they lent him money for the trip. Oh man, we are a trip. Come on, baby, don't do that. Nah. Gibbs really serious. All right, Gibbs, here. I'm gonna give you 10. I'm gonna give you $20. Here go 100. You take that on, man. You best of luck. You make it rich, man. Don't forget about me, baby. Won't forget about you. He never said whether he had the blessing of his mother and siblings. Wearing his only suit, which was in fair shape, he left Philadelphia carrying a single suitcase containing clothes and personal items. His friendly assistance was hidden on his body. Okay, so it says his friendly assistance was hidden on his body. So whatever people gave him, he wore. He carried with him on his body. Those were his personal effects. Wearing his only suit, which was in fair shape, he left Philadelphia carrying a single suitcase containing clothes and personal items. Okay. So he didn't have much. He was a light traveler. A lot of people who travel these days, travel internationally, travel wherever, they can learn something from Mr. Mifflin Gibbs. Travel light. Okay, just make sure you pack enough underwear, t-shirts, underwear, undergarments, panties, ruse, drawers, boxers, and the like. Undergarments. You pack that enough of that, you can wear the same pants day in and day out and be good. That's just a little bit of the traveler in me giving some advice. While he arranged for transportation, other African Americans were already headed for California. They reached California by ocean steamer to Panama. Ocean steamer to Panama. Now, why would they go from America to Panama to San Francisco? That's just the way the ocean liner traveled, I suppose. And after crossing Panama by steamer to San Francisco by the Gila Trail, the overland route through Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona to Southern California, and from there north to the gold fields, or by the Oregon Trail, the overland route from Independence, Missouri to Northern California. Okay, so there were two options: go overland or by sea. Going by sea meant you're going to travel through Panama. All right. Slaves were brought to California from the southern states on the Gila Trail. Slaves took the Gila Trail. Now, I wonder about the Gila Trail. Does it exist today? What if there was a hiking trail, the Gila Trail today, that you could take, that you could walk? Wouldn't that be interesting? That would be interesting. Slaves were brought to California from the southern states on the Gila Trail. At least 1,200 and perhaps as many as 2,000 made the trip. Some owners promised freedom if slaves mined a certain amount of gold. Some good white folks, you mine some gold, I'll let you free. Others pledged a percentage of gold to slaves. Others pledged a percentage of gold to slaves who could use their earnings as they wished. Pledged a percentage of gold to slaves. Pledged. So you do the work. Let me see. Some owners promised freedom if slaves mined a certain amount of gold. Okay, you guys mine $30,000 worth of gold, I'll set you free. That's one way. Give me that amount, I take 30,000. You walk away from me, a free man. You're good. That's one way. Or others pledged a percentage of gold to slaves. You give me an ounce, you give me an ounce, you give me an ounce. They could use their earnings as they wished. Pledge. Okay, so you give me an ounce, you give me an ounce, you give me an ounce. You make more than that, and you could take it. But you give me an ounce. You work for me until I have an ounce. You give me an ounce of gold. Today an ounce of gold is worth $2,000, so that's not bad. That's a lot of gold, in fact, to be mined. All right, but whatever, I digress. The promise of freedom was the best news possible if owners kept their word. If owners kept their word. If they kept their word. Man. Yeah, you get out there, you make $30,000 worth of gold for me. I'll set you free. You got my 30,000? Well, boy, oh boy, that's good. I got my 30,000. You did some good work. What you gonna do? You gonna go back to those southern states? Well, if you go back to those southern states, you're still gonna be a slave. Might as well just stay right here and continue working for me. Come on, bring me another 30,000. No reason to leave me. We're in this together, Nothing better than being with your old master. Or, all right, so you made 1,000. Oh, you made 2,000. Okay, you give me the 1,000. Okay, that sounds good. Now give me that other 1,000 that you made. Oh, but master, you said. I don't care what I said. You see this Colt 45, this rifle? It's got a bullet with your name on it. I'll put it between your eyes. I'll shoot you right between your eyes if you don't give me that other 1,000. Give it to me. Yes, sir. Yes, master. Good doing business with you. Now get your ass back out there. If you don't get your ass back out there, I'll put this bullet between your eyes. See, you can't win with master. You can't win with these guys. They're just greedy. That's if the owners kept their word. Now, if there were some good white folks and they said, man, you can be more than just a servant to me. I'll set you free. Give me what I ask you for. You've done right by me. I'm of age so that what you've given me, I can survive on it for the rest of my days. Heck, I don't need you. You can go and do whatever. Now that would be, that'd be decent. That'd be a decent thing to do, to keep one's word. Not that it's not that it was right. I suppose what would be right would be, hey, you do this work for me. I'm going to take this amount. I'll be good for the rest of my days. You keep all the tools and you keep mining, and whatever you mine, you keep for yourself. Somehow that seems like it's kind of fair. But the thing about it, as we will learn, is white prospectors didn't want the competition, no competitors. So whether it was for jobs, whether it was for prospecting, white men did not want blacks, men or women, competing for those assets. It was tricky. It was definitely rough out there. Perhaps I digress and I continue. Perhaps, where was I? Perhaps 600 slaves escaped before reaching California. At night in a open in a wide open country with no slave posse to catch them, they ran and headed to Mexico, where slavery had been abolished in 1824. In 100 little dramas, they stole horses from their owners and raced through the deserts of Arizona and New Mexico until they crossed the border. They're saying 600 slaves said, "Damn California," and the promise of riches and gold and all of that. That's a promise. That's two birds in a bush. A bird in the hand is, I'll take that horse and make my way to Mexico, where I don't have to be a slave. So they took they rolled the dice. The thing about it is that, as I learned from William Ellis's book, matter of fact, I'm gonna go grab that book so I can show you. The thing that I learned from that book is that, oh no, it wasn't William Ellis's book. There's another book that I don't have. I actually do not have this other book in my possession. I read it. This is William Ellis's book right here. All right, so William Ellis, as it says, this book is entitled The Strange Career of William Ellis, the Texas Slave Who Became a Mexican Millionaire. The thing about it is, from my research, from what I've learned, is that the slaves in Mexico, no, the slaves in Texas who were near Mexico, probably in New Mexico, probably Arizona, the slaves who went across the border to Mexico for freedom, found that living in Mexico was difficult, and they found that it was so difficult that they returned to America, where they were slaves. See, the problem was the language barrier. This is, as is reported in the book, Black Pioneers of California. I think I have a copy. I have some footage. I took a picture. I took some video of that book, and I'll put it right about here. So in that book, I learned that enslaved blacks in America escaped to Mexico, and then, finding it difficult to survive to live in Mexico, returned to America to be slaves. Catch 22. A rock and a hard place. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, you dig? All right, but I digress. Where was I? During attacks by Native Americans, slaves were often captured, and afterward they escaped to freedom. Okay, mind you, this sentence right here talks about Native Americans, Indians, attacking. And I think they're talking about attacking Mexicans. See, the thing that I didn't know is that the Native Americans, the Indians, and the Mexicans did not get along. So when the Mexicans were enterprising and they had cattle and they were on their farms or whatever, the Indians would come from America across the border, raid the Mexican farmland and farms or whatever, and steal cattle or steal whatever they could and just disrupt what was going on in Mexico. So the Native Americans and the Mexicans were at war. That's something I didn't know before. Perhaps they're talking about Native Americans and the white man and Americans. During attacks by Native Americans, slaves were often captured. Oh, okay. Well, slaves. This I guess he's talking about America, because if we're slaves, then we're slaves in America. whereas we were free in Mexico. So he's strictly talking about in America. During attacks by Native Americans, slaves were often captured and afterward they escaped to freedom. In one raid in New Mexico, Apaches captured a slave, the first African American they had seen. After closely examining his skin for 2 hours, they set him free. They said, man, look at this dude. He looks like us. We don't want him. We want that strange looking, being. Very different from us, who came over here and disrupted our way of life. We want him. This brother right here, we're good with him. Free African Americans from the North used the Oregon Trail to reach California. They raised enough money to travel to Missouri. Missouri. That's how some people pronounce it. Missouri, where they were hired as cooks, drivers, and servants for the wagon trains headed west. Now, I digress. Let me stop for a moment to tell you. All right. So the gold rush, all like this whole Western thing, it was so treacherous for African Americans, for blacks. Like, yes, we were slaves, but California presented freedom in some form or fashion. It did. Okay. However, the riches of the gold that California promised, we were not going to receive that. We weren't going to be we weren't going to be bidding for that. You see. And so because these white men didn't want competition, prospecting for gold, we had to fall back. And we picked up jobs like cooks, drivers, servants, laundrymen. Okay, these became barbers. These became our jobs because it was either do that type of work or die. The white man was serious. I'll kill you. I don't want any competition. All right. Others worked their way to Missouri by herding draft animals or doing odd jobs. They came mostly from New York, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts, and more than half hoped to buy someone out of slavery if they could get to California, and if they could find gold. The wagon drivers, horse riders, and people on foot pushed out of Missouri with little experience in overland travel. As a result, skeletons of people and draft animals littered the Oregon Trail. Richard Cullen's party of 12 left New York in 1850. They misjudged the weather in Utah, and every member froze to death, including the party's black cook and his young daughter. Caleb Merrick, a black wagon driver for a party from Ohio, lost his life in Wyoming in 1851 when Native Americans attacked his group and wiped out the caravan. Between 1849 and 1860, cholera killed 5,000 people on the Oregon Trail, and dysentery killed 800. No, 8,000, excuse me. Others were picked off by wolves, cougars, or the occasional rattlesnake. Man, it was treacherous. Wolves. What is it? It says wolves, cougars, or occasional rattlesnake. Boy, oh boy. The Oregon Trail did not discriminate. Anybody could have got it. Anybody. Didn't matter. It didn't discriminate. The bones along its length included the remains of around 200 African Americans who lay with their employers in a final equality. Ooh. Black men and white men died along the Oregon Trail together equally. Wow. Those who made it to California experienced heat, hailstorms, swollen rivers, and meals of beans and potatoes in vinegar. Most walked the 3,000 miles to California at 15 miles a day. And when they weren't walking, they were working. Hitch the mules to the wagons in the morning, scrub the pots clean after lunch, feed the horses, and dump the trash after dinner. Wash the clothes, wash the dishes, and go to sleep on dirt under a smelly blanket. They ate by themselves, slept in their own areas, and were paid $1 or $2 a week or just food as payment for work. African Americans were too busy working to record their trail experiences, but whites noted their presence. On the way to California, one traveler wrote in his diary, "We saw a Negro teamster whose perspiring face was completely whitewashed with white dust. He was bent over and straining hard from the severity of his labor." Another wrote, "There she was, a Negro woman, trampling along through the heat and dust, carrying a cast iron stove on her head, with her provisions and a blanket piled on top, all she possessed in the world, pushing on for California." Man, that's terrible. But you can see that today. Go to any of these third world, quote unquote third world, or rather developing countries, and you can see hardworking people doing the unthinkable, carrying heavy load. I was in Ecuador last year, around July and August. I think I came back in August. I was there in July. I was in Ecuador. These two guys they were moving a refrigerator on the street. I'm in Los Angeles. Imagine seeing two guys pushing, hauling, moving a refrigerator. I think it was a washer. I think it was a washer. They were pushing a washer down the street, trying to move it. I don't know if they were carrying it or what, but it's like they didn't have anything. They didn't have a dolly. They didn't have anything to move this. They were just pushing it in the street, taking breaks when they could, just like some hard labor. Because of the cost, few African Americans traveled by ocean steamer. It was the fastest way to reach California, but whites disliked traveling with blacks who weren't employees. James Starkey, a former slave from North Carolina, scrapped together enough money for accommodations on the vessel Pocahontas. After leaving port and taking Starkey's money, the captain forced Starkey into segregated quarters. Whoa, whoa, whoa. He took his money. Like, good, come on aboard. Now get your ass down there with all these blacks. That's cool. After leaving port and taking Starkey's money, the captain forced Starkey into segregated quarters with the black sailors. On the steamer Oregon, a black man was sitting on deck enjoying the sea air. A white fireman threw hot ashes in his face, so he would vacate the seat and go below decks out of sight. In some ways, the Oregon Trail was friendlier. Wow. Let me check to see how many pages. All right, just one more page or so. In April 1850, Mifflin Gibbs paid $300 for passage on an ocean steamer from New York to Panama. He spent the trip in segregated quarters with two other African Americans, and the men ate all their meals in a cramped space below decks. During the month-long voyage to Colón, Panama, Colón, the port where ocean steamers arrived, Gibbs occupied himself by reading newspapers and talking with his companions, who had read the same stories of the gold rush that Gibbs had read. They stayed together when they went on deck for fresh air. Of the 300 passengers, they were the only African Americans. There were two ways to cross Panama: by riverboat or on the Chagres River, or by mule train along a trail that followed the river. The river route was faster, but when Gibbs arrived in Colón, hundreds of men were waiting for the next boat, which was scheduled to arrive in 3 days. Because the river route was expensive and it would mean a delay, Gibbs chose the land route. He paid $130 for the privilege of riding a mule through miles of jungle to the port of Panama City, La Ciudad de Panama, on the Pacific Ocean. After tying his suitcase to his mule, he joined a line of approximately 70 animals and 50 travelers. The heat and tangle of vines made travel difficult. Customers alternated between riding the animals and walking them around trees that had fallen across the trail. Gibbs was issued a tarpaulin. That's a word you have to look up. I have to look it up too. I don't have my phone or anything around just yet. In post production, I'll find the meaning of tarpaulin and maybe put a picture of what a tarpaulin is. I digress. Where was I? Gibbs was issued a tarpaulin to protect himself at night from mosquitoes. Oh, a tarpaulin, that's just a big net, a mosquito net, right? That's context clues will tell you, what they're talking about. They were drawn to the odor of humans who hadn't bathed in days, and they were persistent. Were they really drawn to the odor, or was it the carbon dioxide emitted from our mouths when we breathe? I remember a mosquito flew directly to me, to my mouth. It was like bzzz, and then I blew it away. Yeah, because it was coming for the carbon dioxide. I don't think it was the odor, but I don't know. Besides totally covering the tarp each night, they would crawl underneath for a bite, making sleep difficult. Man, mosquitoes are ruthless. They are relentless. Yeah. Like others, Gibbs became ill from what was called Panama fever, malaria, spread by the mosquitoes. Gibbs's illness may have also been caused by a snake bite he suffered on his leg while walking his mule around a swamp. So he doesn't know what caused it. Okay. Whatever the cause of his fever and diarrhea, he was forced to drop behind for weeks, after which he recovered and joined another mule train. When he reached Panama City, his leg was still swollen. He itched from mosquito bites, and he hoped to never see a jungle again. I lived in the jungles of Costa Rica for 3 weeks. We had a tent. I had a mattress to sleep on. We were out there in the wild, in the wilderness. I welcomed the experience. It was nothing like Mifflin Gibbs's experience. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to compare. I'm just saying, hey, I've been in the jungle before, but not like Mifflin Gibbs's experience. I would go back. The one thing that I wish not to see, actually two things. The one thing I wish not to see again in the jungle are these large cockroaches. They're about this big and they fly. They don't just get up and fly. They crawl around, and then if they're up high and they need to fall down or something, then they'll use their wings to like flutter down and then land safely or whatever. So they don't just like fly around. There are flying cockroaches, however. I think in Thailand you can see them. That's one thing I don't want to see if I go back to the jungle. The other thing is, it kind of is the jungle, but it kind of isn't. Because you can find what I'm about to tell you in Puerto Rico, which is an island, pretty much the jungle if it's unkept, right? And also Japan. These are two places that I know because I've seen proof of it. The huntsman spider, that's what I'm talking about. I don't want to see any large spiders when I'm in the jungle. Tarantulas are cool, but some other spiders, no, I don't want to see them. Tarantulas are beautiful spiders. They're awesome. But these huntsman spiders, no, thank you. I made a video when I was in Puerto Rico, and a huntsman spider was behind me as I was talking, and I thought everything was all good, and I was like, "Oh, this is a lovely place to stay. It's wonderful. I love it. It's affordable. It's great." And just behind me, there was a big old huntsman spider, huge, 4 or 5 inches long, huge, in the curtains. I did not know. But I digress. Where was I? Panama City was also crowded with travelers. Sizing up the situation, Gibbs slept in a field near the waterfront with hundreds of other men. Each day, he inched his way closer to the dock where passengers boarded ships for California. One of his black companions was a fugitive slave from Virginia. Another carried a map of the gold fields and a fiddle with which he hoped to earn a living. The white men in the field kept apart from Gibbs and his acquaintances, but allowed them to stay in line and hold their place each day. Let me read that again. The white men in the field kept apart from Gibbs and his acquaintances, but allowed them to stay in line and hold their place each day. We don't want to be anything. We don't want to be near you. Get away from us. Oh, but you can serve us? Then come here. Serve us. We're often doing our own thing. But other than that, you scram. Wow. After days of dirt and more mosquitoes, Gibbs secured passage on the steamship Golden Gate, which didn't have segregated quarters. He paid $350 for a space on deck with the other passengers, who couldn't afford one of the bunks below. The passengers on deck slept in the same spot every night and ate the same meal every day. Half a bottle of water, half a pound of rice, and hardtack, which resembled a crusty biscuit. Hardtack. How did they ever survive on all of that? The voyage from Panama City took 5 weeks. The entire trip from New York to San Francisco had taken 5 months instead of the usual 3 and had cost Gibbs $800. When Mifflin Gibbs reached San Francisco in September 1850, he was in the same shape as those who had spent 6 months outdoors carrying cargo, herding animals, and sleeping on the ground on the overland trails. His suit was no longer in fair condition, and he had 10 cents in his pocket. Like other African Americans, he arrived with little more than a dream and courage not easily measured. That's chapter 1 of this book. There are some other pictures, but I'm just going to show you the one picture that's here of the man that I've been reading about, Mifflin Gibbs. All right, y'all. That's chapter 1 of Hurry Freedom with my commentary. Peace and blessings until the next chapter. Y'all come back now, you hear?
You're at 109 right now.